everybody, welcome to another episode of Pick Six. This is the Week 4 edition. We are proud partners of Underdog Podcasts, and you can find us on YouTube. If you're listening to this, do me a big favor, do me and Brad a big favor. Go to youtube.com/theunderdog. That's where you get all the good stuff during the week. I unleash a lot of fantasy football, daily fantasy football content, analysis, stuff that you're not going to find anywhere on Underdog Podcasts. Please check that out. Please subscribe. Please help us grow our YouTube channel. We are looking at adding a lot of stuff, a lot of new, different and fresh content in that channel as well. We would appreciate your support there. And again, all you have to do is subscribe and watch videos. It's completely free to do, and we would appreciate it. Brad, this is the Pick Six Show. You're listening to Sean and Brad. Brad, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing very well this morning. You'll notice this unique coffee mug that I'm drinking from today. Do you know why, Sean?
Yeah, Thursday night football. So this is the second Thursday night game for Green Bay. Isn't that weird?
Bizarre.
It's the first 4 weeks, to open the season, and then it's a nice matchup. I think Alshon Jeffrey is back. By the time people are listening to this, if you're listening on the podcast network, the game will probably have already taken place. I'm going to upload this on YouTube. I got some stuff to do this weekend, including, Brad, coming to Miami and seeing some games with you. We're going to watch the college games. We're going to drink some whiskey. We might make some bad decisions, get some tattoos. Yeah, I don't know. We'll discuss. But, yeah, man, so I can't wait for the NFL games. As people, if you're new to this show, basically the whole premise is Brad and I have a Get Paid podcast. It's very popular. It's ranked on iTunes, all that stuff. We do quite well. But we talk about all the games. We talk about some daily fantasy stuff kind of at a high level. In this show, the Pick Six podcast, we talk about our favorite six. Now, this is where last year when Brad and I agreed and came together on bets, we were 65% through the season against all games against the spread, not just our top six. But what we're doing is we're just outlining our top six. We have 6 games to talk about. Brad talks about teasers. I talk about my favorite daily fantasy sleepers as well. So I guess, Brad, if you want, we can get into it, or if you want, we can talk a little bit about that Thursday night game and the matchup.
The matchup is interesting. It wouldn't surprise me if Green Bay lost this game, more so than any game to this point this season. The offense is not great. It's just Rodgers. It's like I was listening to Nick Wright.
I like Nick Wright. Nick Wright's
Me
cool.
too.
Yeah.
I do. I enjoy him. I think he's bright and all that. And he said, for 2 seasons, Rodgers hasn't been Rodgers. But he still believes that he is that guy. Even though there's no proof surrounding it lately, he still believes that is the Rodgers that we have today, the Rodgers in his prime.
Maybe that's why I like. Maybe that's why I like Nick Wright, because I tend to agree with what he says. I completely agree
also.
With that. My only speaking of Nick Wright, the only thing I disagree with is he's down on Gurley. He thinks that Gurley is not physically there. I think he is. I just don't think McVay's utilizing him. But back to Green Bay, yeah, man. In this matchup, I think this is a bad matchup for Green Bay. That's why I'm leaning, and Philly's getting a 1.5, which means on a neutral field, that's basically Green Bay plus 1.5. Green Bay's getting that home field advantage, and rightfully so. Lambeau's a tough place to play. But, I know what Green Bay – we've seen enough games. I've watched every game, right? We know what Green Bay wants to do. They want to run the ball. They want to play tough defense. Philadelphia, their matchup, man, they play really strong run defense, and – we haven't seen enough of the passing game. Look, I'm not throwing shade at Aaron Rodgers by any means, because he's Aaron Rodgers, and I believe he's still that Hall of Fame quarterback in his prime. Aaron Rodgers.
I do too. He's still in his prime.
But
right?
I don't believe in the LaFleur play calling yet. We haven't seen him. We haven't seen Green Bay under duress. They've been playing with the lead all season.
That is true. They have been playing with the lead, and kudos to them for that. But I will say this, Sean. I have to disagree with you. I have said multiple times this year to the people unlucky enough to watch these games with me, I've said I love this guy's play calling.
Oh, do you? Okay.
I do. It always felt like with McCarthy, they were throwing when they should be running and vice versa. It always had that feel. No matter whether it was a 4th and 1 or a 3rd and 7, it always felt wrong. And this guy, to me, so far, it seems like he is dialed in. And he's playing a controlled brand of offensive football. It's not zany, it's not crazy, it's not an aerial attack. And
But it
maybe
hasn't had to be. It hasn't had to be.
It
in a
hasn't
real
had
time.
to be.
Okay.
Correct. That is correct. And we all want it to be because it's Aaron Rodgers, and that's the brand of football we like to see. And that's what we're used to from a few years ago. So when we don't get that,
Yeah.
it doesn't match our perception of what we want. So we poo-poo it. And I do it.
Yeah.
Right? But
Yeah.
I think he is calling plays that the moment calls for, and we keep winning these games by like 10, 11 points.
Hey,
never really out of control, not even for a moment.
Are they 3-0 against the spread as well? I think they are.
I think they are. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. They covered that Denver game.
They did cover Denver. They definitely covered Chicago,
and they definitely covered Minnesota. That was a 3-point.
Are you sure
spread.
about that? Oh, it was a 3-point.
It was
spread.
a 3-point spread in week 2.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, it's yeah. I mean, I agree, and it kind of it's not the same because they're the Green Bay's successful. But I remember when Shanahan went to Washington back when I was still watching a lot of Washington. That was the season they traded. Of course, Washington. They traded the second round pick for a washed up Donovan McNabb, and the Redskins weren't that good of an offense, but you could see the play calling. They had Mike Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan. I think Kyle was actually calling plays, but of course Mike Shanahan had his fingers all over the offense. And every play call, this is why I love the Shanahan system wherever whoever's running it. And McVay is a derivative of Shanahan, and so LaFleur is a derivative of Shanahan too. It's like a great uncle or a great grandpa or something. But anyway, receivers for Washington back in that season were like open. There was like 5 yards of separation because the scheme was so good, and Donovan McNabb would just throw the ball right into the ground. And so I was always saying, like, when Washington can get a decent quarterback that can throw the ball to the receiver who's wide open by 5 yards, then they're going to be all right. Then they had RG3 that season, and they went to a little bit of a pistol, but the same kind of concepts in the route trees, and he had an insane rookie season and then regressed. That's why Cousins was always the right quarterback for that system. But history proves itself. They blew it, and Cousins is never going to win a Super Bowl anyway, so who cares?
I will say this. I don't like another Thursday matchup already. I think it's funky. I don't think it's fair.
I don't like that, yeah.
I don't like it at all, man.
Because the NFL is picking those games out. You got the schedule. The NFL's picking those primetime games. Why put Green Bay on twice in a month? That's weird.
I don't know. It is weird.
But you get two mini buys though. That's the good news. Like now you have an extra 3-4 days. So I mean that's good for Green Bay. But
also, it is kind of nice, especially since you're going to be here. It's nice that the Packers won't be on Sunday. So
I don't have to watch the nervous breakdown when Philadelphia wins this game.
We don't have to be glued to it and so intent on one game. So
but we do have Wolf of Tarpon Springs coming down. Who's Tampa Bay playing this week? They're playing the Rams. I like that game.
Is he coming?
I thought so.
Oh, okay.
Did he tell you otherwise?
I hadn't spoken to him. Yeah,
I believe he's coming in. I'll text him after the show. We'll see. That wolf. Sometimes he's a lone wolf. Sometimes he's a wolf in a wolf pack.
Yeah, for sure.
So we'll see, man. We'll see if he comes in. I think he will, but we'll see. All right, man. Let's dig into our top 6. Or do you want to do no? You know what? Let's do the. Screw it. Let me do the daily fantasy real quick. It'll take like 2-3 minutes. Let me get to my other page here. Yeah, so daily fantasy wise, I do a weekly kind of desperation waiver play show as well that goes up only on YouTube. So again, that's another great reason why to subscribe to that. If you're a gambler, I do basically 3 waiver plays or 3 deep sleepers for fantasy, per position. But again, this is all about our favorite 6. So let me just quickly run through my 6 picks for daily fantasy this week. I'll start with quarterback. Daniel Jones playing the Washington Redskins defense. Daniel Jones is at 5,300. I'm not overreacting to that Tampa game. I have a lot of analytics that I run, proprietary analytics. They do quite well in daily fantasy. I like Daniel Jones because Washington is having trouble in the pass coverage game. Basically, behind Josh Norris, they have nobody. Washington tends to struggle with quarterbacks that are a little bit mobile. We saw that Daniel Jones has some legs. He
does have some legs.
Yeah, man. That dude, like,
surprising.
Two touchdowns on the ground. He basically matched Russell Wilson's stat line.
He can move.
He can boogie. He can boogie.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. So I like him. If you're a fantasy football player, he's only owned in 53% of the leagues as well, so there's a good chance he's still on the waiver wire for you. I definitely suggest picking him up. I have him projected as the 6th best quarterback this week, thanks to that matchup, over 25 in DraftKings, so pick him up. Running back, my favorite running back this week is actually Chris Thompson of the Redskins. I don't think that the New York Giants cover the screen game very well. Adrian Peterson isn't running and particularly effective in Washington. That's because a number of factors. One, Washington is playing from behind quite a bit. And two, they're losing Trent Williams at left tackle. That hurts the running game bad in Washington. I do think Chris Thompson will score well this week. I have him projected as the 7th best running back. He is only $4,500 on DraftKings. My other running back is actually Wayne Gallman from the same game. Again, Washington, not the greatest defense. I think New York has a chance to take a lead in this game. Saquon Barkley's out. Is Wayne Gallman going to fill in for Saquon Barkley? Exactly. Heck no. Nobody can replace Saquon Barkley, but Gallman is worth a shot there at $4,600 in my opinion. Moving it on to receiver, I'll give a bonus one. I like Valdez-Scantling tonight, but that's a Thursday night game, so I'm not going to do it. Valdez-Scantling, I think, does well. Philadelphia, Brad, has the same kind of problem as Washington does. Like, they can always kind of bottle up the top receiver, but everybody else kind of gets a lot of yardage on them. It's not as bad as Washington's problem, but I think Devontae Adams might struggle a little bit for the fourth game, and I think Valdez-Scantling might get in the end zone. We'll see, man. I really think Green Bay is going to pass a little bit more because I think they'll have to tonight.
Yeah, I hope so.
I like that Valdez-Scantling, man. He's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I do too, but I think for the first time, I don't really love the receiving core. You know, it's not
like that Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb in their primes. With
Greg
Devontae
Jennings, that whole crew, man. It's not close to that. So
yeah, I agree. So that was the Valdez-Scantling was a bonus, but for the Sunday games, I like McCole Hardman and DJ Chark, 5,100 and 5,300 respectively. Look, you got to be starting Kansas City Chiefs wide receivers at this point because all of them get in the end zone every week. It's nuts. DJ Chark, that Gardner Minshew, that mustache game, I love it. He throws the ball to DJ Chark. I don't know why the respect isn't there. And Chark is only owned in 58% of the fantasy leagues. So I don't know why he's not on everybody's roster at this point. He's gotten in the end zone every single week. He's getting deep passes. It's not a dink and dunk offense in Jacksonville like we're accustomed to seeing in the passing game. I like him quite a bit. And the last one on my list is Will Dissly, tight end from Seattle, the number one tight end on my board this week in that matchup against Arizona. Russell Wilson loves Will Dissly. They just traded Nick Vannett to Pittsburgh. I think Will Dissly is going to take a step forward. And if Russell Wilson is thrown to you in the red zone and looking for you, it's going to go quite well. We see Tyler Lockett scoring well. We see Will Dissly scoring well. Will Dissly on DraftKings is only $3,600, well worth the money. So there you go. There's DraftKings. There's daily fantasy sleepers. And Brad, I think we can get into the games and then end with teasers if you're good with that.
I'm good with that, buddy. Let's roll.
All right, man. So first game on our list, we have Cleveland +7 at Baltimore. Brad and I are taking Baltimore.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you love this one, Brad. You want to start with that one?
Yeah, let's start with it. As soon as people started freaking out about Cleveland, I went the other way. I thought there's just no way. There is no way. I don't see it from Baker Mayfield like everybody else does. I don't think the best player on your team should be the wide receiver. I think that's a bad recipe. And I think it's a bunch of punks who think they're good, and they're not that good. They're just not that good.
Yeah.
All right? What are we talking about? So Baltimore is that good. And Baltimore is the real deal. They don't talk a lot, and all they do is perform. And that's why I like them this week. They're like the anti-Browns, which is curious because they were once the Browns and all that business. But
yeah, it's funny. Yeah.
That's my take on it, man.
Yeah, so I have a prevailing theme when I'm looking at NFL bets, and One of them is, quarterback versus quarterback matchup. The other one is, coaching versus coaching matchup. And the thing that I always try to pay attention to is the offensive and defensive line. I'm actually going to give a slight edge to the Cleveland Browns defensive line, but their offensive line is bad. With all the stars that they've been building, they really kind of screwed the pooch on the offensive line, in my opinion. Freddie Kitchens as a coach, as a play caller, look, he did well to end the season as an interim head coach. But when defensive coordinators have a full season to prepare for you, and all they're doing for 15 hours a day is watching tape on you to try to figure out how to destroy you, you need to be able to rebound. Kitchens seems to me like he's more of a reactive play caller. I don't really love what I'm seeing from him as a head coach. I don't think that he's the guy to lead this team full of personalities, Brad. I think Cleveland, the first part of their schedule is brutal. Baltimore, we saw last week how good they are. I loved their performance against Kansas City, who Brad, you agree. Kansas City's passing game is like otherworldly. This is like all-time stuff that we're starting to see now. It is
all-time stuff, yeah.
It's hard to beat teams like that, and Baltimore kind of almost pulled it off with their atmosphere. Now, Baker Mayfield, I'm not down on him, but the thing is, like, Baker Mayfield, I've always felt, and I came around on Baker Mayfield last season. I like him, but I felt that Baker Mayfield is not ready to put a team on his shoulders yet. I think you need to help him out. Not only with the receivers that they helped him out with, but with Nick Chubb, and they're not running the ball enough.
Yeah, and you know what? He may not be ready, and I don't think that's his fault.
No.
And not everyone can be Patrick Mahomes and just fully all in, ready immediately. And you said they screwed the pooch when it comes to building that team, and they did. They have beautiful wide receivers, and that's like having the best tasting icing ever.
Yeah.
But the cake is made of sawdust and, roadkill. You know what I mean? Like, there's just, you don't want to eat it, but the top of it's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
They have to build that line.
Yeah.
Because Baker Mayfield is not a big guy.
Right.
He's not a strong guy. I look at him in those commercials, and it looks like he should be working at Fidelity, fixing my internet. Am I the only one that sees this?
I do like those commercials where he's like trying to start the lawnmower. It's a good commercial.
I like that one. It's clever. It's a good one.
It's good. Or when he's like flicking off the electrical box, the circuit breaker, and all that. That's a good one.
He looks like one of us. I'm sorry.
I know he does.
We should not be playing football, which is why we don't.
And let me say this:
like a dude.
Out of all the quarterbacks that wear headbands and have facial hair, he's my second favorite behind Gardner Minshew right now. But look,
I love that.
Yeah. I don't think if Baker Mayfield was playing and Andy Reid was coaching him, he'd be putting up 30-something touchdowns. I think that like when I say Freddie Kitchens is reactive, I think Freddie Kitchens bought into the hype, and he's thinking, okay, Baker Mayfield was as good, he's 30-something touchdowns in his rookie season. Let's just keep putting the ball in Baker Mayfield's hands. But at the end of that Rams game, it was first and goal from the 5-yard line. There's a minute left. Cleveland has all 3 timeouts, and they didn't even think about running the ball there. To me, like, run Nick Chubb up there, get to the 2-yard line at the worst, right? Milk the clock into about 30, maybe 25 seconds left. Like, what if they got on first and goal from the 5? What if they got that touchdown, and then there's like 40 or 50 seconds left for Jared Goff to come down and kick the field goal and win the game? It just doesn't make any sense. It's not. It's just. It's not good situational football. He just doesn't.
Doesn't seem to have it, right?
He just doesn't.
Yeah, he just doesn't seem to have it.
You know what I think? I think he's about 4 weeks away from a nervous breakdown.
I look at him and just the way he engages and he communicates, and it's like I look at him and I think linebackers coach.
Yeah.
Maybe the best damn linebackers coach to ever exist. I'll give him that, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I just don't see head coach when I look at him, and.
Yeah, the way he handles stuff in the press conference isn't very presidential,
He does. Yeah, he's not presidential at all. Like, he doesn't even have a trace of it.
Yeah, look, I think it's a talented team, but they need to. And one thing I liked about this Cleveland team, like the Shashi Brown stuff, I liked, and I like what Miami's doing now. I like building draft picks, but then they went and they got the new guy. I can't remember the guy's name, the GM there, the guy that was in Kansas City. For some reason, Pioli's sticking in my head, and I know it's not him. But the guy that is basically running that franchise now at the GM level, he traded all those assets away for the Flash, right? And when you have a bad offensive line, unfortunately, their possibly future Hall of Fame left tackle retired. That's a big hole. We see the hole left by Trent Williams in Washington now. They didn't address that. And if you're trying to win a team, like when you get in December and you're playing road games in Foxborough or Arrowhead, you got to be able to run the ball and control the clock. And Chubb, I love Chubb. Like, I love the skill player talent on this team. Let's face it, they have great talent, but they're just not doing the right things to get everything out. It's like, it's like you have the best salesman in your job or whatever, and you have him doing paperwork or her doing paperwork all day.
Yeah.
Have them out in the field selling. They're just not putting their players in the best position.
I hear you. It's a good analogy.
And I also don't think because that defensive lineman they got is fantastic, and they had a chance last draft to get Bradley Chubb on top of that and have two of the best defensive ends in the game. They want to be a run-and-shoot offense, right? So what do? You get a pass rush. They had a chance to do that, and they end up sending and getting I think he's a little bit undersized, but they get a really good safety, and he's really good. But you got to build the freaking lines. I don't know, man. It's like Cleveland was just there. It's like they were climbing the mountain, and then they slip on a rock, and they tumble back down, like 1,000 feet or something.
Yeah, well, I think it's safe to say that maybe the organization, and I don't know this, but I think that first and foremost, they wanted to be relevant and popular.
Yeah.
So they made that happen. Regardless of how many wins, they're super relevant and super interesting.
Yeah.
I'm going to be watching them this weekend.
Know what I mean? Yeah. That's going to be a great game.
What time is that game at?
I believe that's got to be an early game. They wouldn't put that on at 4.
Sure.
Yeah, it's an early game.
Again, I'm sorry, it slipped my mind.
Sorry?
Baltimore.
Yeah, Baltimore.
Baltimore, yeah. Man, I hope that's on TV because I really want to watch that one.
Now, here's the interesting thing about the matchup. Baltimore's given up passing yards, so I think Cleveland is going to be in the game plan. They're going to be forcing the ball downfield, trying to get it going. But Baltimore, we saw against Kansas City, dude. They can do whatever they want in the running game. And Lamar Jackson he didn't throw a great wet ball. It was a sloppy game. He's pretty good at quarterback. I know you watched a lot of that game, Brad. Like, he's better than what we saw, and he looked pretty good anyway. So it's a good one, man. So anyway, you and me are both on Baltimore. We like that bet a lot.
I think that's a weird line, man. What is it, 7?
7.
I mean, if you would have told me it was 9.5, I would have been like, yeah, that's appropriate.
It's that Cleveland hype, man. I was looking at I was looking at futures, and Cleveland is still, I think, plus 1,400 to win the Super Bowl. And Baltimore's like 2,500. Hello? Like, is anybody watching out there?
I'm still convinced the best performance of the year is Baltimore going into Kansas City and going toe-to-toe with them.
Yeah.
In a loss, that was fantastic, and that said a lot.
That was a good game. I think Baltimore in my top 10 in my power rankings this week is number 7. They didn't slide too far. I like this team a lot. I actually like them more having watched them play Kansas City in that loss.
I think they could move up in the power rankings even in a loss.
Yeah, I know, man.
Right? Who's to say the win is the end all be all?
Yeah, I know, man. They look
nothing
good.
happens in a vacuum. There's circumstance.
Yep. Okay, next game on the list, Brad. We have Kansas City. Speaking of that game, Kansas City -7 at Detroit. You and me are both on Kansas City.
Oh yeah, big time. I think they win.
Why don't you start? The NFC North with your love of the Packers. Tell me why the Lions are going to lose this game.
Because the Lions have not lost yet. They actually won a game last week that they definitely should not have won. And as soon as they do that, they're the type of team, as soon as, they start showing us a spark of magic and divinity, then they just lay the biggest damn egg possible, right? And they do it in the worst of circumstance. It's a home game. Okay, we're good. Let's battle another good team. No. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be a train wreck. Kansas City's going to be up 25 before we know it.
So let me give a little bit of love to Detroit. 2-0-1, very nice. They really should be 3-0. They kind of blew that first week against Arizona. Then they beat the Chargers, and then they beat the Eagles last week. The defense is doing a lot better than we thought, Brad. The offense, I don't think, is quite there. It's kind of a funny offense because almost like what we're seeing in Green Bay, it's kind of, when you think about it, it's kind of a boring offense to watch. You look at the stat line, you're not impressed by like anybody's stats there, but they're undefeated. So that's kind of
Yeah,
the,
hey,
that's
good
the
for them.
formula.
But
Um,
that's my point. Is
yeah.
they're undefeated. They've looked fairly well, and they've pulled a few games out.
Mm,
And here comes Kansas City to
I
say,
know. Yep. Yep.
you
In the
know,
dome, so the weather's going to be just fine for
oh,
Kansas City.
they're gonna have no. The listeners out there, please quote me on this. And if I'm wrong about this, I will admit it. But like, Kansas City is going to have such a fun time in that stadium.
No. Yeah. Detroit. Now let me counterbalance my praise for Detroit with the Devil's Advocate stuff. They got the Chargers. They should have lost that game. The Chargers, their punter was kicking field goals. He missed a couple of crucial field goals that could have had them in that game. And then Philadelphia, they got Philadelphia without their two receivers. So Nelson Aguilar was Philadelphia's receiver. I agree. This isn't about Detroit. I like that they're playing well. They are playing a lot better. They're improved. They're better than we thought they would be, Brad. But Kansas City coming in there after a really, really tough – like Kansas City already faced, I think, a really tough test last week. I think this week, it's like, going out and running sprints for like an hour and then switching to a jog. It's just like, this jog isn't so bad after running sprints for an hour. Yeah, I don't think there's a lot to say there. Matchup-wise, I just don't think anybody in the NFL matches, including the Patriots. I don't think anybody matches up with this passing game. Brad, this week in my power rankings, I actually just did code number ones. For a while, I had the Patriots number one and Kansas City number two. Now I'm just saying, screw it. Let's just wait till December and see who's better.
Yeah, right.
Man, they're so good. And in December, Brad, those two teams could be undefeated when they play. Wouldn't that be wild if like two 13-0 teams or 11-0 or whatever they are, Kansas City, New England, would be great. All right, Brad, let's move on to the next game here. We have Seattle minus 5.5. This line changed since we talked to Get Paid. It was 5. It's minus 5.5 at Arizona. We are taking Seattle there. The third road team, 3 for 3. Why don't you start with that, Brad?
Okay. It's Russell Wilson. I think he's going to control the game. And, Arizona's a big experiment at this point. Seattle's not. I think they go in and they have a fairly easy time, much like KC. It has a different volume and a different tonality to it, but I think they go in and win fairly easy.
Yeah, I know the book on Seattle is they're not as good on the road as they are at home. They did go into Pittsburgh, and I know Roethlisberger went out of that game, but they did win in Pittsburgh. That's not an easy thing to do. Arizona, schematically, we know what Arizona's trying to do. They're trying to hit the short passes and take their over-the-top shots. I don't think that matches up well with Seattle. David Johnson, I think, is going to have another tough game. This team's going to be one-dimensional. I would assume that Kyler Murray will throw a couple interceptions in this game just because I like Seattle's defense a little bit more than everybody else. Seattle coming off a loss in a winnable game. I feel like Seattle, because Drew Brees wasn't playing, I feel like Seattle came out really flat in that game.
There may be something to that, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, this, one of the best quarterbacks in the game is not in here, and we're at home, and we're going to have a fun time. And then all of a sudden, Alvin Kamara is running down the sideline for 40 yards, and you're in a little bit of trouble. There may be some truth to that.
Yeah, Chris Carson's fumbling the ball, and you look at we talked about it on the Get Paid. You look at the stat sheet in there, and you see Russell Wilson throws for over 400, has 4 touchdowns, 2 in the air, 2 on the ground. You look at the receiving stat. Everything points to the turnover. There was no differential. Both teams had 1 turnover. I guess the difference is special teams. New Orleans had a touchdown there. You look at the stat sheet and you're like, of course, of course Seattle wins this game and they lose it. So I think they're going to come out. They blew that game. I think they knew they blew that game. They came out with no energy. This young experiment, Brad. I like the way you put that. Kyler Murray. I think they're going to come out and handle business on the road in Arizona.
And I saw a thing the other day, or heard a stat rather. Teddy Bridgewater in his last 15 starts he's 11-4 or something.
He's a pretty good quarterback. I think he's one of the best backups in the league. Yeah,
he may be one of the best backups in the league. Where was he before that he could have such a
Minnesota before he shredded his knee?
Okay. And they were playing
I think
well
he had a
before
brief
that?
layover at the Jets, but I don't think he ever got in there. So when they're talking about his last 15 starts, I think it was like this start and then 4 years ago in Minnesota.
Okay. But he is
No, man, he's good, I think.
He's a starter,
but he's not Drew Brees,
But
you're right.
Drew Brees.
You're right. Like when I couldn't understand, for example, why Jacksonville paid all that money to Nick Foles and didn't make a play for Teddy Bridgewater to start. Like he's a lot cheaper, and his track record as a starting quarterback was actually better. But
remember
whatever.
2 years ago when Aaron Rodgers went down and they had that freaking backup.
Was it DeShone Kizer? No.
Something like that. And he was terrible. That guy was a backup quarterback, and he still is.
That guy was a third-string quarterback. Jeez.
God, that guy was just terrible.
He was.
But that's not Teddy Bridgewater, right?
Yeah.
He can play in this game, and he's probably better than Tannehill. He's probably better than Mariota. I mean, is that fair to say? So the point is they probably thought they had a gimme with Drew Brees going out and overlooked him.
Yep. Agreed. And credit New Orleans, man, for winning, because you and I certainly were on Seattle last week.
Well,
but we think,
I assume the same thing.
Yeah, I don't think that was a bad bet for us either. You lose those, you take your lumps, you say, okay, well, that was a miss, but I don't feel bad about making that. It's not like I wake up and I bet against Tom Brady, and I was like, why did I do that?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, why did I bet against Bill Belichick? Why didn't I? That's if I took the Jets last week, I would have covered, but I wouldn't feel very smart about taking the Jets last week. But anyway, it is all about getting paid here, right? So we think Seattle will rebound 5.5. I think this is a touchdown game at least, so I'm liking that one. Next game on our list, Brad, we have Dallas -3 at New Orleans. Another road team. We're taking Dallas again on this one. I'll start with this one, Brad. So New Orleans, we saw last week, they go into Seattle, handle their business. A couple of things. One, I think Dallas is the real deal this year. They're number 3 on my power rankings, actually.
I do as well.
Dak Prescott, he didn't have a great game last week. I think Dallas came out flat similarly. They came out flat against Miami. And then kind of righted the ship in the second half and got that victory. I think Dallas, having seen New Orleans win at Seattle, a team that Dallas barely escaped in the playoffs last year, I think they're like, we have to take this team seriously. Dallas's defense is better than Seattle's defense is at this point. They are fast. They have speed everywhere, especially at linebacker. I don't think anybody in the league matches up with Alvin Kamara, but they can do as good a job in trying to bottle him up as anybody. I think with Bridgewater, Michael Thomas isn't the Michael Thomas we're accustomed to seeing, just because, look, Drew Brees is like an 80% passer now. That's hard to reproduce. So I think Dallas is going to try to bottle up Alvin Kamara. They're going to do a decent job of that, although in fantasy circles I would still start Kamara. I think they'll hold this offense down. We saw last year, Brad, by the way, this is one of our rare misses late in the season last year. Dallas covered the spread against New Orleans late in the season. I think it was like a 10-6 game or something like that.
Yes, it was. That was a Thursday night or something unique about it, right? It was a standalone game.
Yeah.
And Dallas came to play, and I think they are the real deal as well. And then what's funny is, this may be silly, but New Orleans has some bad juju at home. I mean, there's been like 3 games in a row where they have gotten terrible calls. It's like they have like this bad luck at home, and I don't know where that comes from, man. Skull and crossbones up in there. Yeah, that New Orleans voodoo.
It's
something.
that power. It's the power of intention, right? It's the reverse of whatever the secret is. It's like you know something's going to happen, so it happens.
Yeah, that is the secret, man. You assume something's going to happen, and then you breathe life to it.
Yep.
And I think Dallas, their brand, I think they match up well.
Yeah.
I do.
Yep. Yeah, and it's the matchup. Offensively, New Orleans, I think their strength as a team is to be able to limit and play the run pretty well, but they haven't been as good as last season. But they were lights out last season, so that's going to be hard to reproduce anyway.
They were lights out last season, but not for the entire season.
Yeah.
I mean, we can look back and say they're a different team the last 8 games than the first.
Yeah, true.
Right?
True.
Not a bad team, but a different team.
Yep. And I think Ezekiel Elliott, even Tony Pollard, he's the best kind of backup running back defense Dallas has had since Zeke has been there. I think both of those guys will keep each other fresh and run very well. And Dak Prescott, this passing attack is on point. Witten coming back, I think That, to me, is like the most underrated storyline of the season. And I said this 2 years ago. I do the Fantasy Football Almanac, as a lot of, I guess my followers know. But everybody was talking about Des Bryant that season. Des Bryant's gone, where all the targets go. I said, guys, Dak Prescott likes Jason Witten, particularly in tough downs, like long third down conversions and in the red zone. And that's a huge loss. So with Witten coming back, you can already see it in the games. Like he's throwing the ball to Witten in the red zone, and having that at tight end. No disrespect to Blake Jarwin, who kind of is the backup, the secondary guy there. Having him in addition to Amari Cooper. And I like Randall Cobb in this offense. He looks a little spry. He looks like he's got some new life. I know Michael Gallup is out with a meniscus, but Devin Smith has come in there and done quite well.
Can I just say this, Sean?
Yeah.
All right, so maybe we take a second and just slow down a touch. They beat Miami, worst team that's been in the league in a long time.
Yeah.
Okay?
Washington.
Washington.
And the Giants.
Thank you.
And the Eli Giants.
And the Eli Giants. I mean, that's layup, slam, dunk.
Yeah.
All right? So let's all just slow down. That doesn't mean they're not good. That doesn't mean they can't compete with New Orleans, but no, all right, here we go.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I agree. But, the other thing is we talked about the defense. The defensive line is good. The offensive line is one of the best in football, as everybody knows. And their quarterback is, outside of last week, I don't think he had a good game against Miami, even though they covered the spread there and it was a huge spread. I don't think he had a great game, but Dak Prescott is better than he was last season. And ever since this team,
fair enough.
Ever since this team got Amari Cooper, they've been a different team. They really have. Like when they've got that other quiet receiver on the other side that can pull in 2 touchdowns a game. Look, I'm not a Dallas fan by any means. I grew up hating Dallas because I was of my Washington affinity back in the day. Now, as a gambler, I don't care. I'm just looking for money at this point. That's who I root for every week, my wallet, as I tell people. I don't care. And I actually bet on Dallas in that Washington game. I was telling my brother about this, Brad. Such a weird metamorphosis for me. So I bet on Dallas in that game. And, I play those high-value pick'em leagues. Well, I needed Dallas to cover the spread. It was a pretty big spread. And when Dak Prescott was throwing touchdown passes, I would, fist bump. Or I would pound my fist. And they were playing Washington, my boyhood team. And I was just telling my brother, I'm like, I have completely evolved to the point where, or devolved if you prefer, but to the point where I just don't care about anything else other than the spread. So
it's nice to not care about stuff.
It is. It is real
That's
nice.
Freedom.
Actually. It's freedom.
It's very. Yeah,
and I can
nice.
take in the games and just enjoy watching the games, Brad.
Yeah, right.
It is actually a lot better, believe it or not. But
I do believe it.
Yeah, but I just want everybody out there to know I'm not a Dallas homer. I don't like the team at all, but I really do think that they're good this year. Okay, Brad, let's move it on. We have Cincinnati. I think this is the last of the games that I kind of like. I actually like the first 4 a lot better than the last 2, but that's kind of how we go in this one. Cincinnati, the line has moved now in our favor, actually. Cincinnati plus 3.5 at Pittsburgh. You and I are both taking Cincinnati in this one. Brad, do you want to start off in saying why we're taking Cincinnati?
Pittsburgh, I think, is coming off the rails, and I don't think Cincinnati is a pushover by any means. And obviously, there's the backup quarterback situation. I mean, let's look at Pittsburgh. 16 months ago, they had Le'Veon Bell, Ben Roethlisberger, and Antonio Brown. And now they don't have either, all, right?
Yeah, right.
So it's like, who are they now? I mean, who are they? Are they the?
You're right.
Right. So I think that Cincinnati can go in. Cincinnati knows who they are. They've had a core unit. They've had the same quarterback. So just from that standpoint alone, that goes a long way. I think they go in there and play well.
I like that. I like that. I like that terminology. Is who is Pittsburgh now? And I was complaining on the Get Paid podcast. I was complaining about this offensive coordinator. I don't think he's reacting to the situation. He's still going 5 wide a lot. They had 4 turnovers. They got 4 turnovers in the first half. They were in the red zone, it seemed like, the entire first half against San Francisco, and all they could do is come away with field goals. I don't think they run the ball enough. I think James Conner is very talented. I think he is a top back in this league in skill set, but they're just splitting him out at wide receiver a lot, maybe going single back. I think this team needs to, for Pittsburgh to get their season back on track, I think the defense is actually fine. I think they need to just help their young quarterback. It's the same kind of thing with Cleveland. Help your young quarterback. You have good skill players. I like this Deontay Johnson, the rookie receiver they have. I like James Washington. Obviously, I love Juju Smith-Schuster. They have a good offensive line. Lean on that offensive line. get maybe go two running backs in the backfield. And run the ball a little bit more and set up some play action. You don't have to go 5 wide. Mason Rudolph is not Ben Roethlisberger yet. And for that matter, I don't even like when Ben Roethlisberger runs a 5 wide. I'm not going to complain about it on a podcast like I am now. But they can do better. Pittsburgh's offensive play caller is going to do better. My prediction, Brad, is that their offensive coordinator gets canned at the end of the year because this is the second season in a row where they're going to miss the playoffs. This is the second season in a row where they consistently abandoned the running game, a running game that with Le'Veon Bell was otherworldly for a couple seasons. I don't like it. I don't like the play calling. Again, it's Pittsburgh. I'm kind of lumping in there with Cleveland in terms of, you're missing the point with your personnel. You have Nick Chubb in Cleveland. You have James Conner in Pittsburgh. React to that. Play your personnel. That's what Bill Belichick has done for 20-something years, and he does a pretty good job, right? Play your personnel and try to win with the tools that you have at your disposal. It's not all about your system. Cincinnati, Brad, I thought they played Buffalo pretty well. They almost stole the game.
Yeah.
I don't like – we were talking about LaFleur earlier with Green Bay. I don't like this guy. I think it's Taylor or Tyler. I think it's Taylor, Zach Taylor or something like that. But the head coach in Cincinnati comes from the same kind of McVay tree and all that. I don't think he's utilizing his personnel enough. I think, I know they haven't gotten anything going in the run game, but they abandoned it too quickly. Joe Mixon is probably the most talented guy they have on their offensive team, depending on what you think about Tyler Boyd or, Andy Dalton. But basically, they have good skill players. So I'm going to list them off. Andy Dalton, not bad, right?
Okay.
The Red Rifle.
Not bad, right.
Mixon, who's pretty good. Gio Bernard. You have Tyler Boyd and John Ross, who are healthy. Eifert is healthy, so he's not the Eifert he was about 5 years ago, but he's he's a red zone target. They just need to get the running game going, and I think that this team, the defense played a lot better. They played with some pride against Buffalo. I think they're ready to come in there and, if not upset, get within a field goal in this game in a tough environment in Pittsburgh. So I don't know, man. I like Cincinnati. Like you said, I think they're ready. I don't think they're as bad as their record indicates. And I think they're playing with some pride. I think the coach has them playing hard. So, he hasn't lost the locker room. There's something to be said for that.
Yeah, agreed.
Brad, let's move it. Last game of the week for us. Carolina plus 4.5 at Houston. For me, this is the closest one for me. And the lone home team, I'm taking Houston. We're taking Houston. You want to start because I know you love yourself some Deshaun Watson.
I do love some Deshaun Watson. I also love myself some Houston's Texans culture.
Yeah.
I don't, they won me over. What was the first game they played this year that we watched?
New Orleans, that field goal at the end of the game.
And they lost the game, right?
They lost that.
Okay, but that's neither. Yeah,
they really should have won.
Here nor there. Yes, they should have won that, man. They squeaked that out, and that was a heartbreaker. But just like watching them compete and the skill positions, and they look like a airtight, complete football team that knows who they are and knows who they want to do. It's like it jumped off the screen to me, and I was buying their brand, man.
Yeah.
And I like what they do. I think they're great. I mean, are they ready to beat the Chiefs or the Patriots? Probably not.
I don't think so, right?
But I think, Carolina comes in all excited about this backup.
Kyle Allen, yep.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I think they eat him for lunch, dude. I think they have some film on him now, and I think they just eat him up. The only saving grace I think that Carolina has, Ron Rivera is an excellent coach in my opinion, and McCaffrey, that guy. I mean, Jesus.
It's like McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley, I think, are the two most fun players to watch.
So dynamic, dude.
Yeah.
So dynamic. But it's only a matter of time before Ed McCaffrey doesn't have 200 yards of all-purpose offense, right? I mean,
Ed McCaffrey. It's Ed McCaffrey's boy.
His
prodigy.
Ed McCaffrey's boy, right?
Chris McCaffrey.
What's his Christian McCaffrey? Yeah, sorry. So Ed McCaffrey's boy, I mean, if he doesn't perform like he has been, and it's a matter of time, then what else is there?
Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. And Deshaun Watson, if they can give him an offensive line, I think he could, have a slugging match, with Baltimore. I think they're probably my number 4 team in the conference right now, Houston. I haven't really gone to that level of whatever, but Houston is also in my top 10. I like Houston. I like them in this game, although when I did the scores, I had Houston 26, Carolina 20. That one's where I'm a little bit on the fence on that game, but we are on that. Those are actually the only 6 I think we agreed on this week. Yeah, so it's a good thing we got to 6 this week. But anyway, that takes us through the games. Do you have any teasers you like, Brad?
I do have a few teasers I like. So I think that I'll take one from one of our pick six. Kansas City is 7-point favorite. So obviously, if I think they're going to cover that, moving them down 7 points is a very, very smart move in my opinion. Okay. And now I would do the same thing with Baltimore, although I think it's a bit of a cop out to make the spreads that we already like that much easier. So I'm going to do one layup in there. The two other ones that I like, by the way, I have a correction for you before we finish. Okay. The two other ones I like are the Rams at home against the Bucks. The Rams are a 10-point favorites. Make them a 3-point favorite, or actually a 6.5. Sorry, 2.5 if you want to buy an extra point. And also my favorite one, dude. The Vikings are 2-point underdogs at Chicago. You make the Vikings 9-point underdogs. Is there any chance in hell the Bears beat them by 10 points? Do you have any doubt that this is going to be a 2-point game either way?
Right.
I mean, even if the Bears do win, there is no way they blow this team out by more than 9 points. Impossible.
Yeah.
So those are my three, brother. That Minnesota one is so juicy for me. Love that one.
Yeah, very, very, very good. So what's the correction you got?
You said that the Packers at the start of the podcast were 1.5-point favorites, and it sounded weird to me at the time. I looked it up. They're 4.5-point favorites tonight.
Oh, you know what? No, I was looking through different sportsbook. There is one book that has them at 1.5. You're right. They are 4.5-point favorites. So Philly's getting 4.5 points, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. You're right about that. I forgot. I was looking around different sports books and getting these lines, but you're right. We use Bovada most normally. So you're right. 4.5-point favorites. So there you go. We like that even a little bit more, but we'll see. If you're listening to this, you're probably picking this up after the game, so you know if we were right or wrong. And remember, I said I'll own up to this. I like Valdez-Scantling tonight in this game.
Okay.
If you're watching on YouTube, you're going to get this before the game. So if you're playing the Thursday night showdown, I like Valdez-Scantling. So hey, Brad, I think we can call that an episode. I have to get ready. I have to finish packing so that I can come fly to Florida and take in the games with you this weekend. But for everybody else, I fly back on Monday. Brad and I are going to be on our normal schedule with Get Paid and the Pick Six podcast, getting ready for Week 5. Hope everybody out there goes out, makes some bets, and gets paid.